Well, after an incredibly long drive back from the World Club Champs in Slovakia, I absolutely love the World Club Champs. It's the pinnacle of domestic team fishing, if you like. Although it's carried out abroad, it's the qualifying structure is such that your team in the UK is what qualifies to go to the event. Last year, Drennan Barnsley Blacks won the Division 1 National, which at the time was the qualifying criteria for the competition. So we absolutely over the moon to be going. We went last year to Slovenia and came a agonising fourth, if I'm being honest. Always looking to at least get a medal and of course win the event. And in Slovenia, I felt like we had the opportunities. Didn't quite go our way. Fish spawned a little bit on the second day and became difficult to catch. So it was a little bit frustrating. However, in Slovakia, it was always going to be very, very difficult to get a gold medal. The Slovakian national team and the Czech national team have fished the venue a lot. The Czech team that they put in is full of international anglers. Slovakian team was the top local side, did very, very well. Always going to be very difficult to beat on this venue. And as the practice week went on, it became clear to me that those two teams were going to be very, very difficult to beat. That's not a defeatist attitude, that's a realistic attitude of not sort of getting your hopes up too high. I think the things that we've seen over the last 10 years in World Champs fishing is that a lot of teams are now very, very good. And when you go to a venue that is difficult to, very specialist in the way you fish it, the local teams can be very, very dangerous, and they're always your first teams that you're trying to beat. Here was no different. Let me tell you a little bit about the bit of the river we were fishing. It was the River Var, and it was between two power stations which controlled the flow along the length. Now, the flow was so strong that 50-gram flat floats, which is the biggest we tend to carry, weren't big enough to hold your float still. Just to give you an idea, that's a 50-gram flat float there. And if you held that still in the flow from the river, your float was riding like this. Okay, so that's how powerful the water was. Nothing in the UK I've ever come across would make my 50-gram flat float sit on end. I've always been able to hold it still with a 50-grammer. So I think that if you imagine a flooded river boiling through, that's what this looked like all the time. So you have to get your head around that when you arrive to start with. Fortunately, a couple of us have been out with the team in Croatia last year and seen the powerful flow. So we knew a little bit on how to approach it. Some of the key species we were fishing for. The first one was barbel, known in the UK. Barbel in the UK we don't tend to fish for on a pole too much, but we know their feeding habits and things like that. And then there was another couple of fish that dominated. First was a vimba. It's a small fish, looks a bit like a dace skimmer hybrid, I'd sort of describe it as best. It's got a little lump on the top of its nose. And then you've got a naza, which is like, it's like a big chub with a big ball on the end of its nose, like a flat nose, and they use that. They're very aggressive in the rocks. We've watched them feeding in the shallow water, but these are alien species to us, so we're just trying to figure out how they feed. They're an absolute nightmare for coming off the hook, because as they come in they turn as they feed and you don't get a very clean hook hold, which makes life very difficult and very frustrating when you're trying very hard to get bites. So they were the main species we were fishing for. The venue wasn't overly deep, or what most people wouldn't consider deep, although when the water was up you could have 4 meters of water. On the final day of the match I had 4 meters. I fished a top 6 of pole, so you can see that in some places it was quite deep, but not everywhere. And then I would say the biggest obstacle was then how we were going to present our bait and what we were going to feed. So maggots are a bait that these fish love. We found that out in the past. So getting the maggots to the bottom in a strong flow means using sticky mag with gravel. So when you're using a gravel, use a lot of gravel and some maggots mixed together with some sticky mag. That forms hard balls which sink really quickly to the bottom. It's a way of carrying your maggots to the bottom. Got to remember, bait droppers, things like that, a feeder is not allowed in this competition. It's float only, and you can only cup or throw your bait in. So you've got to be thinking about ratios of gravel to maggots. Obviously, the less gravel you have, the lighter your balls are. They can go further down in the flow, but obviously the more gravel you have, the less maggots you're feeding at any one time. So it was really interesting, really interesting. Brain was going into overdrive throughout the week, trying to figure out exactly how these fish wanted it. Obviously, when you're trying to establish all those things, sometimes your focus on presentation and hook baits and things like that can become blurred. Especially if you're not getting many bites. To add into the mix, there was a lot of bleak. Now, bleak fishing is something that is commonplace across Europe. We don't do a lot of it in the UK at all, but you know, a lot of us, including myself, done a lot of practice at bleak fishing. Certainly identified that as a weak area in the past. Needed to go out and find out what it was all about. And that was good. When we were out there, I must admit, we were good at bleak fishing. We caught a lot of bleak when we needed to. We were next to some good teams in practice and we caught a lot. So it was nice to be able to know that you could go bleak fishing if you were in trouble and catch a few fish to keep you going. That's something we do a lot in the UK. We change lines, we rotate lines to try and keep fish coming. And we felt that if it wasn't happening for you on long pole, you'd be good enough at bleaking to keep yourself in contention and not blow out, which is always important in a team match. So the week went really well. We had a really enjoyable week's practice. Got some, you know, great anglers in the team. The team of 6 was myself, Alan Scottorm, Simon Field and Frankie Giannicelli, Matt Godfrey and James Dent. I can assure you now that's a very strong team of 6. We had a fantastic support team on the bank. Some great guys there, you know, with the captain Glenn Lawrence leading the way. It was good. It was really good. There was a good spirit amongst the lads, and that's really important as well, working together and trying to figure things out. So as the week went on, I'm not going to lie, it wasn't the easiest of weeks I've ever had. When I'm working on my fishing, I wouldn't say I always pick things up dead quickly, because I don't. I think that I like to try and figure out what's happening in order to make it the best I can. And I thought early on I sort of had a bit of an idea of what was happening, but later on in the week I struggled to catch a few fish. I never seemed to be getting any bites immediately. Some of our lads were getting bites immediately, but not every day. It was just maybe 2 or 3 lads every day. Different lads would get bites from the start, and that made a big difference in what you caught. And I think that never really happened for me personally throughout the week, so it was a little bit difficult going into the weekend. I wasn't 100% clear in my mind what was going to happen. However, what I have got is a lot of good guys around me. I'm worked really hard myself in making sure all my technique, feeding, everything was bang on. I knew if I was on some fish, I was going to be able to catch them. So I had to carry that confidence in. We used the Creluso race, really good float, really great to use because they sit really smoothly in the flow. There was a nice bristle. We've actually made the bristle slightly shorter for this occasion. Obviously you come with a longer bristle, which is great a lot of the time. On this occasion we shortened the bristle down just to read the bites a little bit cleaner. But you're looking to keep that bristle upright when you're running your float through. You're not looking to have it held back because the float's already got an angle in it. So you're looking to just keep that bristle roughly upright as you're putting it through the peg. And that was a nice way of presenting your bait when you were fishing out there. Right over the top, nice and accurate. And if you could do that and feed really well and get them feeding right, you were going to catch some fish. So come day one, I drew in C section. I had my work cut out. In my half of the section I had a Czech Republic and Slovakian angler, both of who had caught a lot of fish during the week, so I knew they were going to be difficult to beat. Trouble is, it's not just them, loads of other good teams been catching really well, so I was really up for the challenge, to be honest. I set up 30, 40, 50 gram flat floats, some smaller floats in case the flow eased off, and then some whips for bleak. When the match started, fed my bulls. Van and I were kind enough to help us out with some ground bait, so we used Secret, Black Turbo and some brown crumb. Really nice mix with some soil in it. And then obviously when we fed that, it was really important that you knew where your bait was on the bottom, and then you'd feed some sticky mag in some gravel to top up as and when bites dictated. When I went in at the start, I caught a few fish straight away. Small barbel, small vimber, really nice. Caught a slightly bigger barbel around 3.5 pound, which certainly gave me a run around on there in the strong flow. But I put a nice net of fish together, and after 2 hours I had 34 fish, which, to put it in perspective, was probably double anything I caught in practice. So I was really happy with how it had been going. I knew that the extra space we were given on the match was going to make the fishing a bit better. Still don't get a lot of space compared to UK matches, but it was really enjoyable. I was really enjoying the fishing. I think sometimes you have to realise where you are. I was very relaxed, and it was great to be part of a good fishing match. Unfortunately, the heavens had other ideas. Opened up with an absolute unbelievable lightning storm. So the match had to be stopped, and because the match was stopped, it was cancelled over halfway. The match was cancelled, so the 2 hour result counted. I was a bit disappointed because I'd been catching really well, but I was really pleased, obviously, because I knew I was going to have decent points because I'd had such a good session. At the weigh-in, Czech Republic and Slovakian angler had 10 and 9.5 kilos. I knew I didn't have that sort of weight. But I did have 8 kilos 200, which was a comfortable third in the section, which I was really pleased about. So, you know, that sort of result on that stage is something that's, you know, been a goal of mine all the time. I was second and third last year in the event, so another third, I was really happy. Got back, we'd had a first from Matt Godfrey, fished a fantastic match. Alan Scott on fished a fantastic match, was second. James Dent was completely the wrong end of his section and came 8th. But even then, unbelievably, that, you know, he could have definitely been 13th or 14th. Really happy with how he fished. And Simon Fields has had a steady match for an 8th in section as well. That's given us 22 points on the day and put us 4th. I think we'd have scored a few more points. Simon's peg was getting stronger and stronger. If the match had continued, I think we'd have gained some points there. Everywhere else, I think, would have stayed roughly the same. So it was a really pleasing first day performance. As predicted, Slovakia and Czech Republic were miles ahead of the rest, 12 and 14 points. We felt realistically bronze medal would be a fantastic achievement, so we went into the second day unbelievably prepared. There was a good energy about everybody that night, and we went in really well prepared. I drew A section, A16. I was a bit disappointed about that, really, because my section went from 14 to 27, and the top pegs in the section had dominated practice and dominated the day before, so I knew in reality bottom half was always going to be my sort of level. If I could make it the top of the bottom half, if you see what I mean, that was my goal. And that's why I love team fishing so much, because we know in fishing you can't always win off your peg, but you have got to be the best of the rest if your team's going to do any good. So I've gone in at the start a lot deeper. We'd had a lot of rain from that storm the day before. The water was coloured, it was up a metre, and the pace was similar, but I had a lot of depth. The 50 gram float was the only option, definitely. I had to ease it through a little bit just to get some sort of control, so tiny bit bristle tipped up. You had no option in order to get it over your bait in time. Nothing going at the start. I had one decent roach, about 10 ounce, 8-10 ounce, a small vimber. Foul up to fish which came off. That was disappointing. That was a big fish. Took me out into the middle of the river and just came off. I had a scale on the hook. So that was disappointing, but nobody was catching anything around me. At this point, I made the decision I had to go bleaking. I felt I had to go bleaking. I started bleak fishing about 15 minutes in. The runners came down, and I mentioned to Will Freeman, who was running for me, that, you know, really I was catching well on the bleak and I want to stay on it. He said that was great, but I was always, you know, they were catching fish on the long pole up the other end, so I was falling behind. But when you're not catching anything out long, you've got to come in and catch something, otherwise you're going to be well down. I had a really good bleak session. I caught around 200 in the next couple of hours. I had to keep stopping to feed my long pole peg, putting some bait in the long pole. Had a couple of looks on long pole, but I caught 200 bleak in about 2 hours. And with an hour to go, I knew that I was down in the section, but I was at the better end of my half, which is what I was aiming for, to be honest. So I went out on the long pole last hour, hoping to consolidate my position. It was great. The flow had eased. I could stand the bristle up, and all of a sudden I was catching, and I was catching well. I caught a fish every single cast, around 25 fish in the last hour, which, trust me, in that depth and flow is pretty much as quick as you're going to catch. Really, really pleased. Caught a big narza, about nearly 800 grams or so, and then lots of other small vimba. 3 maggots, big size 10, 12 hooks. You know, we needed to use strong elastics. I used a 13 or a 15 on the bigger ones, and I had to go for it. Started swinging fish and really went for it. Never lost anything in that last hour. It really went for me, and it was really good. When the whistle went, I thought, well, I couldn't have done much more with it being so good last hour. And the news on the bank was, it was looking touch and go whether we'd get a medal or not, and I was likely to be, like I said, the bottom half of my section, maybe 8th, something like that, and we weren't too sure. Unfortunately for me, the scales told a slightly different story. It was incredibly close. The top 3 pegs in the section have had 9, 9 and 10 kilos. I've weighed 8 kilos 200, something like that, 8 200, 8 220 or something like that. And there's been an absolute rack of 7 and 6 kilos, mainly 6 kilos, couple of 7s and a lot of 6 kilos, 6.5. 6.5 kilos was 11th, and my 8 kilos 200 put me 4th in the section. So I was absolutely over the moon. And like I've said to you before, sometimes in team fishing, to get that good result, to get that 4th, probably means nothing in an individual match. But in a team situation, to come back with 4 points rather than 11 points is absolutely fantastic. So I was absolutely over the moon. And when we totted the scores up, we'd secured a bronze medal. We'd beat the Romanians by 3 points. We'd actually tied with Czech Republic on the day, which shows how good a performance we put in. And we were 3rd overall, which was great. Like, I think a lot of the teams accepted that Slovakia and Czech Republic, congratulations to them, were fantastic. But I think that our bronze medal was as best we could have done, and I think everybody else knew that that was the medal up for grabs, and people were very kind, and it was very, very great experience to stand on the podium with the team again. Had a bronze medal in the past in Serbia, so it was a great, great experience to be back with them there. Certainly an event I want to get back to. Certainly an event I want to win. Really, really do believe an English team will win that event in the next 5 years. We've got some fantastic teams in England, and I'm sure one of those teams will do the business over the next 5 years. But a really, really remarkable experience. I'm absolutely shattered. I've got all this gear to sort out, all my rigs to sort out, come back down to earth, get myself ready, and I look forward to my next festival. I think in a couple of weeks' time we've got the Division 1 National, so I'll catch up with a blog on that one. Winners of that event go to the World Club Championships next year. So I hope it's Barnsley, but whoever it is, I'm sure they'll do a great job. Alright, catch up with you later, thanks, bye.